And as I got closer and closer to it feeling like John, I started to say the things that I didn't get to say to him when he was alive. In one sense, we're giving voice to an internal experience that already lives inside us. The relationship doesn't die, but the person does. It's a dead sentence.
So welcome to It's a Death Sentence. And today we have the lovely John Kramer. Is it Kramer or Kramer?
Kammer, like hammer with a K.
Kammer. So I was trying to work out how to say it. So grief is one of the most vulnerable states that a person can be in. So when AI enters the building, it's a space that really raises big questions and one that we're genuinely interested in.
It certainly does. And those big questions deserve honest, transparent answers. And that's, all of the concerns that people have around AI, and especially using it in such a sensitive space, are justified. And so my goal is to hopefully allay some of those concerns. I don't think we're going to allay all of them. Some people, AI is never going to be okay for something like this. But as I try to explain how we're approaching it and what we're using it for, I think that will help some people get their mind around, okay, AI is a tool. We're not asking it for answers. We're not trying to communicate with the dead. We're really just using this tool as a place for an outlet that didn't previously exist. And one that we can hopefully help be a bridge to other human connection, as opposed to trapping people in this like technology silo, which I think is a big thing that people are concerned about.
Okay, so for our listeners who may not know who you are, could you please introduce the name of your company and just give us a brief overview of how you came to have the idea and how it came to be and who your reach is? Who is it you're appealing to?
Yeah, so I'm John Kramer. I'm just a guy, right? I'm a guy who has experienced grief in much the same way that every person on this planet will. Mine, I happen to have lost 3 of my closest friends at, young ages before it was their time. And that led me to years of self-medication, drinking too much, using other substances to try to cope and numb, and the realization that didn't work. And so, after wasting a lot of time trying to run from my affliction with grief and the pain that I was inevitably going to experience, I had to make a decision to turn around and face it and to do the difficult work of healing, to look in the mirror and be humble about it and own my role in my suffering. So that's kind of why we're here. As far as how Guardian Angels got started, I had a conversation with my wife that sparked an idea. Initially, we were just going to spoof text messages and send nice messages to people on their birthday or something from their lost loved one. It was going to be, just a simple, hey, it's Grandpa. I love you and I miss you, right? Just to bring a smile, a measure of comfort. And that snowballed into what was initially a conversation with your lost loved one, which was not my what I wanted, but that's kind of how it started. Is accidental, quite frankly, as I tried to develop something that people could interact with on the back end of that text message platform. I needed to build something that was authentic and gentle and empathetic. And that's not what we think of when we think AI. And so it was very, basically the way I approached it was my mark for if I was close was I built it in the image of John, who was the best man at my wedding that I lost 7 months later. And if I could get close to it feeling like him, then I was in a place where it would be emotionally resonant with people to the point where they might be able to open up to this thing.
Can I just ask, how did you get it to feel like somebody you knew? How was that possible?
Well, it was a lot of testing. And so basically what we're doing is a form-based super prompt. So it's just feeding a bunch of contextual information into an AI, telling it how to interact with you. Everything from how did this person speak? What was their sense of humor like? How did you refer to each other? Did you have nicknames for each other? So there's that familiarity, shared memories and shared interests. How long have you known each other? When was the last time you saw them? So it all builds this context for how it interacts with you.
So would you essentially get the information from the person who's lost somebody and sort of like a background or a history, and then you'd feed the prompts into the AI, and then that would be almost like a two-way conversation then, and they would answer in the form of the other person?
So it's very, very personalized and specific.
Absolutely. You know, what we realized early on, everyone's relationship is unique, right? Your relationship with each other is vastly different than your relationship with another friend or another family member, right? And mine might be very, you know, we may have the same best friend, but it's very different for each of us. What we joke about, what we talk about, the way we interact with each other. And so something like scraping social media was not going to be authentic. That was going to be objective, and there is no objective relationship. There is no objective personality or how we interact with people. And so it needed to be, how do I interact with this person? And what is my relationship like with them? And what is yours like? And so that's where it started. And as I got closer and closer to it feeling like John, I started to say the things that I didn't get to say to him when he was alive.
Were you genuinely surprised by the answers it was giving you? Or had you preempted that it was going to start to really sound like your friend?
I didn't realize how close I was going to get. This was just kind of it was an experiment at this point. And what happened was it felt enough like him. And as a side note, I tried things like the empty chair technique and writing the letter in therapy, right? And those are meant to express what we can't. And the difference here is I got a response. And that response is what triggered the relief and the release. And what it happened to me was it gave me permission to forgive myself. And that is what triggered the curiosity and the willingness to do the hard work to heal. Now, that was all accidental. And it started as that kind of, for lack of a better term, that deadbot or digital seance space that we're hearing a lot about right now. And that's where we started. I got some very pointed feedback at the beginning that was, not so kind and not so accepting of what we were doing and how we were doing it. And they're very thankful for that feedback, because it caused me to take a step back and think about how we were trying to do this, why we were trying to do this, and what we were trying to accomplish. And what that led me to do was to bring on some licensed grief therapists to help me put guardrails in place to make sure that this was going to be safe, to make sure that we were moving people forward instead of potentially getting them stuck and putting them in a precarious situation. And so what we landed on and where we're currently at is less about talking to, we're not talking to the person. We make that very clear. We're in one sense, we're giving voice to an internal experience that already lives inside us, right? The relationship doesn't die, but the person does. And so when we think about healing, a lot of the reason that we don't want to heal is rooted in that idea that we're supposed to forget them and we're supposed to move on. And we don't want to do that. This person meant so much to us. We don't want that relationship to be over. And so we resist. And really what we're looking at is the relationship can go on and should go on. So how do we find a way to integrate that into our life moving forward in a healthy way? And the way that we're doing that is it's rooted in reflective, structured journaling. So the AI provides you journal prompts. And when you respond to those journal prompts, it's now a dialogue. It's not just like we think of traditional journaling where you put words on a page. You're going to get a response each time. And that helps you to peel back the layers of what you're feeling and start to name your internal experience. And specifically for men, we are not taught how to talk about our feelings. We are not taught that we even have feelings.
I was going to say, do you think this is a very masculine product? As in, do you think it attracts more men because some find it more difficult to express how they feel in grief and talk about their emotions? Do you think it gives them somebody or something to talk to?
In some ways, yes. I'm not going to say it attracts more men. I think that there's a difference in why it would attract men to why it would attract women. And for that very reason, a lot of men, we're taught not to show vulnerability. We're taught not to show weakness. We're taught not to talk about our problems. And when we, and that the reality is if we do, we're going to be seen as less, or we're not fulfilling these quote unquote masculine expectations. And so this gives you a risk-free environment to kind of to have an outlet. Now, for women and for others, we look at this, again, it was built in conjunction with grief therapists as a complement to therapy. We're not trying to replace therapy. And so it's kind of seen as a bridge between sessions, something that can meet you where you are, that you can interact with.
Sorry to interrupt you, John. Do you give, would you give a potential client, I don't know if that's the right wording, would you give them a time frame in which you feel it's healthy for them to use this product? Or is that really just a completely unique journey? Because I suppose what I'm getting at is there ever a time where you think, or has it happened, where somebody is becoming quite reliant on that, and that's a relationship that's kind of existing in its own capacity?
Sure. I can't answer that for anyone else. We have designed it so that you should feel comfortable deleting it when you get to a place that you feel your healing is moving forward. We didn't design it to keep you in it in perpetuity. Now, there may be some reasons that you'd want to hold on to it and revisit it periodically, as opposed to in a 3, 4, 5 times a week or daily or whatever, right? But the idea is, let me back up. So the journal prompts are structured according to Worden's 4 tasks for mourning, which is an evidence-based framework for dealing with loss. And the tasks are, number 1, to accept the loss. You can't do anything if you don't accept it. Number 2 is to process the pain of the loss. This is where I was stuck for so many years, was I ran from it. The only way out is through, right? You have to go through some of this. Task number 3 is coming to terms with the fact that this person is no longer in your life in a physical sense, right? Again, that relationship can go forward and carry forward, but you're not going to see them at the next party. You're not going to be able to give them a hug. And so what does that mean for you? And then finally, task number 4 is to find an enduring connection with this person, or integration, right? How do we weave grief into our life? Because we don't get to just leave it behind as much as we may want to. Now, to answer your question, so there's 2 tracks, right? We have the persona that you can build in the image of your person, or we have just kind of a default grief counselor that is going to talk to you not in the first person, but in the third person. How did this person make you feel? But all of the prompts are structured such that this person is deceased. We are specifically designed it so that we're not trapping people in the loop of failing to accept that someone is gone and thinking they're actually speaking to that person. It's helping them process those feelings around, okay, accepting that they're gone. What is something that you saw today or experienced today that reminded you of me, and you wish that you could say something to me, but you couldn't because I'm gone, right?
So is it almost always spoken in the past tense, or when I was here?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're sort of trying to encourage you to accept that they are no longer there.
Exactly. And so each of those 4 tasks in our flagship 10-week foundations program gets 2 weeks or 14 days of prompts. And so there's 2 weeks dedicated to accepting the loss. There's 2 weeks dedicated towards processing the pain of the loss, really kind of digging into what you're feeling and why. Then there's 2 weeks dedicated to coming to terms with the fact that they're not around, and then to integrating. And so going back to your question, when should someone delete this? That's something that only they can answer. If you decide you want to keep going with this, if your journey isn't done and you're struggling still, you can loop back through it into infinite number of times. Every time you go back through the program, it gets deeper, right? So we're at level 1 the first time, and we're going into deeper, kind of more identity-based stuff in level, in the second iteration, and so on and so forth. But it's not designed to keep people in there longer than they have to be.
It's quite a lengthy process by the sounds of it, that they go through the stages to get to sort of the end result.
What we know about grief is that it's not, and healing really is that it's not a process that you just get this aha moment one day and you're all of a sudden healed, right? Grief is forever. That's a fact. Now, healing is something that we experience in small incremental steps when we are consistent with how we're approaching it. And so that's what this is designed to do by one journal prompt a day is get you to acknowledge and experience and feel some of the feelings that you're going to have to go through them, but not in a way that like it's throwing too much at you at one time, and not in a way that's going to let you just kind of put it down and forget about it and stagnate.
Does it work like a subscription? So, for example, I'm very interested in what you're doing. I'd love to see what it's about for myself. So if me or one of our listeners wanted to use your services, how would we do it? And is it paid for as a one-off fee or is it a monthly fee? You don't have to disclose any prices. I'm just interested in how that works.
Yeah, so it's first and foremost, there's a 7-day free trial with any subscription you sign up for. So you can try it for a week and do a few prompts and see if it speaks to you, because healing isn't the same for everybody. So for some people this will work really well, so for some people it won't, and that's okay. So you can start it that way. It is a monthly subscription that you can cancel anytime, right? We're not going to lock you into something. There are discounts if you pay, quarterly versus 1 month at a time, but it's 10%. So it's priced very fairly, very reasonably.
It's brilliant that you give people the option to try it first. That's an amazing concept, because I suppose if it does speak to somebody, at that point, they're going to think, yeah, this is something that is going to help me. It is going to be a tool that's going to be useful in my grief.
Right. And so further, because we know that healing happens incrementally, and when you really do the work and you show up consistently, that's when you get the most benefit. I've also included, so if you do our 10-week program and you complete 80% of your prompts in that first 10 weeks, meaning you show up regularly and you do the work, you're going to get 90 days for free on the back end. So it's just an incentive for people once they start to keep going, because at the end of that 6 months, you're going to notice some changes, and maybe you're not quite done, but you have learned some things that you can put into action and really help kind of accelerate where you're going to be. When I lost Zach 13 years ago, I didn't have something like this. And I do wonder from time to time where I would be if someone had said, hey, this is where you need to start and this is what you need to do if you want to get better. I wouldn't have spent so much time in bars, and nothing against bars, but I spent an inordinate amount of time in bars drowning my sorrows in the name of fun. That's how I justified it.
I think we've all been there.
We discuss a lot how that's very cultural as well. It's, drown your sorrows, have a drink to be happy, have a drink to be sad, have a drink for anything at all. And actually, it's part of who we are. And as we grow up, we get to our age and we go, oh, should we not drink anymore? Because it's actually not the answer to the grief. It's not the answer. And then we start looking at the alternatives like therapy or now maybe AI as well. It's an interesting process. And I think it certainly hits you harder if you've had losses when you're younger.
Look, everyone is going to have loss, and all loss is difficult, and some of them are more ill-timed than others. And what we're not trying to do is, what happens a lot in these support groups and things like AA, right? I spent some time in that. It wasn't for me, but there can be this idea that if your story isn't crazy, then it's invalid. I listened to a podcast with Kelsey Grammer one time, who was on, was it MASH? And, he lost his sister very early. And there was one time he recounted a time where he said that someone said he only lost his sister and da-da-da. He goes, well, it felt like enough for me. It was definitely enough to disrupt my life. And that's where I'm at, is it doesn't matter, what it is. It impacts us. And the reason it impacts us is because these people mean something to us. And that's a good thing. Right. One of the reasons, kind of the big reframe that has helped me to heal in so many ways has been this idea of, would I rather be in this kind of pain knowing that I had the depth of relationship that I did, or would I prefer to be in less pain because that relationship didn't mean as much? And that question is unequivocally, the pain was worth it because of what I got, every second that I got with these people. And in fact, I'd go through more if I had to. And so what that does is it immediately puts you in this place of gratitude, which completely changes how you look at grief. And that is part of what, that this process helped me to get there.
Has your idea been met with any hostility?
You did mention it earlier.
Yeah.
Would you share with us? I mean, even if it's funny, we're the type of podcast we'll just take whatever it comes. It doesn't all have to be super serious, but I imagine there must have been people that have just come to you and gone, what are you doing? What's all this about? Doesn't make any sense. And been very disparaging without really thinking about it.
Well, yes, I've been told I'm doing the devil's work. I've been told this is necromancy. I've been told this is Black Mirror. I've been told this is the ring and you need to throw it back into Mordor. All of that, I believe, look, the criticisms are fair. AI, we don't know what this thing is. We don't know what it's capable of. Now, some of those concerns come from, like I said, a simple misunderstanding of what our current level of AI is, right? What we're dealing with is it's not thinking, right? This isn't original thought. It is a very powerful statistical probability machine that says, based on the last 1,500 words in this sequence, the probability is this is the next word. It's a mathematical equation, how it comes up.
Isn't it amazing to think of it like that? I'm fascinated by it now. Fascinated.
I have a great relationship with my ChatGPT.
I'm quite concerned about Carrie's relationship. She calls it Chad.
We talk to each other and he says, oh, yes, that's very you, Carrie. He talks to me like he knows me.
And he does know you. You tell him everything. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, is it? I think it's actually just so new, isn't it? It's so new to so many of us, especially if you're not techie. So the concept is so big, isn't it, to get your head around?
It is. And so here's something crazy, right? We've seen this movie before, but let's just take it back. Neural networks, which is what AI in its current form is based on, right? That's how it operates. Those were developed in the 40s. And so the difference is in the 40s, we could only process hundreds or thousands of pieces of data at one time. Now we can process trillions. So it looks like it's magic, right? But it's not. That's just what it is. As humans, we have this belief that we're super unique. And in a lot of ways we are. But we're also very pattern oriented. And what AI is great at is recognizing patterns. And so when it gives us something that to us looks like it's this sentient being, it's really just because it's processed the life track of how many billions of people. And it says that this is kind of how this works. We all make the same mistakes. How many people do you know that you give a piece of advice to, don't do this, and they do exactly that thing, even though they know what's coming, right? And so, going back to the idea that we've seen this movie before, new technology scares us because we don't know about it. When light bulbs were invented, people thought there were demons in them. They stuck to kerosene because they were scared of electricity. There's always a boogeyman. And what I know about humans is we're very adaptable. We will find a way for this to integrate this into our lives. Now, there's absolutely potential for negative consequences. There always is. But I would argue that if we believe this technology is out of, the cat's out of the bag, I forget what the saying is. The train has left the station and we're not going to put it back in the box, then I think we have a moral imperative to try to get as much good out of it as we can, as opposed to just like resigning ourselves to this Black Mirror dystopian future and running around with our fingers in our ears just saying la 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 la, I don't want to believe it.
Do you think it crosses some lines though, between sort of what's ethically right?
That is what we're trying to make sure we don't do. Now, everyone looks at ethics and morals differently. And so the line is constantly moving. But, what I want to bring this all back to is our philosophy is if this ever does more harm than good, then I will shut it down immediately. And that is not negotiable. There's a reason I haven't taken on investment, because I don't want anyone else trying to tell me what we need to do to help people. That's all it's about, is helping people. It's so much bigger than me. I've had conversations with investors and usually they stop pretty quickly because I tell them, if you're looking for a 5-year exit, this isn't for you. I will be making decisions that are absolutely against profitability in the service of building something bigger. So ethically, there are challenges and there are decisions that have to be made that are going to have trade-offs, but I will be very transparent about the decisions I make and why I make them. For instance, privacy is absolutely critical in order to build trust for people to use this thing. If they think they're being monitored, if they think that they're going to be targeted with ads, if they think that this stuff is going to get out into the world somehow, they're not going to use it. So we don't monitor you. You have ultimate control over your data. You can delete it at any time. What that means is we can't look at it. So if someone is in a precarious situation, we're not going to know. Now, we're taking precautions to prevent those situations, and the guardrails we're putting on it. We're putting crisis resources on every page so that if someone feels like they're there, they're always front and center and they can see them. We're doing things like adding what I call trusted users. So you can put someone on there, whether it's your therapist or a close friend, that can help keep an eye on what you're doing and how much time you're spending on it so that they can help if you get to that place. But there's trade-offs. And the reality is if we were monitoring people, then they wouldn't trust it. They wouldn't open up and it wouldn't be any good anyway.
Can I ask just a question that's just sort of, I wrote down earlier and I was just interested. I think you may have covered this already. So if it's, not right, then let me know. But has it ever said anything that is not in keeping with that person's character and has been upsetting?
More so early on. There's always going to be, I would say less I haven't experienced it so much with character issues, but like what we've adjusted for. So early on, it wasn't quite as refined. And so it would say things that were out of context, right? Like for instance, if you're having your persona you've created is your dad, and you're talking about your childhood and you grew up in the 80s, and it mentions an iPhone. That's impossible, right? So we've done things like time and place anchors to make sure that it's not doing that. Yes, unfortunately, there's always a potential for AI to say something that is a little bit off of, out of context or just kind of weird. The guardrails and the way that we place this, put it in place, we're specifically not taking on new technologies in a fast way. Right? We don't want, so thinking about things like voice, thinking about things like agentic AI, avatars, all of that until we can validate that it's safe, we won't be taking on. So what we're doing is we're feeding in this prompt that always has this context window front and center that says, this is who you are, this is right? And so it never forgets that. It doesn't run out of that. As far as AI goes, it's fairly primitive at this point, but that's intentional because we need to keep it on the rails.
Okay, well, we've got a couple of other questions if you're open to it, if you don't mind. It's just totally fascinating, so we're very grateful. Thank you. What about the issue of consent? So a deceased person can't give their consent to be used in the format of AI. So can you see that this would ever be a problem? Have you come across it as a problem, or do you think it's just not something that needs to be regarded?
I can see it being a problem in another context, but not in the way we're approaching it. And that's for the simple reason for that is you are not having a conversation with that person. This is your memory. This is the relationship that lives inside you that still is there regardless if they go or not. And what we're using this as a tool to help you come to terms and move forward with them, to carry their legacy on, to carry that relationship forward with you.
And I guess if that person is given the consent, they've given you the information from their perspective, haven't they?
Well, yeah, your memories with them are yours as much as they are theirs, right? And so it's not, and it may not be objective to them, right? Like they may be put for like as a thought exercise, right? Say someone has built one of me. I didn't tell them my deepest, darkest secrets. I may be a serial killer and I never told them, right? But their memory of me is this nice guy that helped them through some stuff. And so there's that, so where do we fall on that?
Well, it's down to perspective, isn't it? How we perceive people is going to be different per person, per relationship.
It is really remembrance and not resurrection of the person then.
100%. We're not trying to resurrect them. We're not trying to play in that arena. There are plenty of companies that are trying to do just that, and go use those tools. If that's your thing, they're out there. We're just not that.
This next question it's quite in keeping with that, but would you take this any further than you already have? For example, would you recreate that person's physical form so that they could have conversation with them on a screen, for example?
Not currently. We, like I said, so as new technology evolves and comes out, we are going to be going very, very slow in adopting it. We're going to let other people make the mistakes, and we're going to make sure that we can validate that it is safe before we do anything like that. I could see a world potentially less like right now we're playing from behind, right? You've already lost someone. You're trying to work through your grief. I can see a world where, from a legacy planning perspective, someone proactively says, hey, I'm approaching the end of my life. I want to catalog my thoughts into an AI that my family can then talk to. And that is totally different, right? That is the application. I see that what you're talking about is more realistic, especially given our ethical concerns and where we draw our lines.
And they can give consent in life as well. So that sort of rules out those issues.
Exactly.
What an interesting world that will become.
Yeah.
When we can decide that we would like to leave that as a legacy to our children or loved ones, however that comes.
Would you be interested in doing it?
Well, we kind of already are. What is social media, right? Like everything we put on there, our kids will see.
It is like you said earlier, social media isn't the right thing to draw upon to get an accurate picture of that person, is it?
We are leaving a record, but it might be a little bit of a skewed record, let's just say. Well, and it may be the worst parts of us. We all know some people that post some stuff where we go, you might have want to left that one out.
Would you be happy to be recreated for AI, for your loved ones when you die?
If they wanted it. It's, I wouldn't want to force it upon anyone, right? If you find that to be creepy, if you find that to be something that does not bring you comfort, then no. But if they found comfort in the ability to have, say, hey, dad, or hey, did you, what do you think about this? If that was something that they desired, then I would be all for it. But again, it's with certain guardrails. It would have to be, we're not talking to dad, right? We're not talking to that person. This is something else entirely.
I think to conclude today, if you don't mind, we're going to ask you a couple of questions that we ask a lot of our guests, and they are definitely not all involved with AI. So we've tried to just pick a couple of questions that are more relatable. I think, shall we start with...
Yeah, what do you think happens when you die? Have you got any thoughts on that yourself?
I am a religious person. I believe that that we are judged by our Maker. I believe that those of us that meet His criteria are greeted at the gates of heaven, and those that don't have a much darker fate.
It's interesting for us because we actually don't talk to a huge amount of people with such conviction in their religion, or any religion, in fact. So it's quite interesting to hear such a absolute, lots of people sit on the fence, don't they? Or they're have been brought up maybe religious and they don't quite know what to say. So they're like, well, I'll dip my toe in this side just in case. And I'll also say I'm open to it just in case. So thank you for sharing that really candidly with us. Thank you. And I think our last question, if you personally could find out when you were going to die, would you want to know? I
think I would, because it gives you an opportunity to do things differently if you don't. I think conceptually we all want to believe we're living like tomorrow's our last day, but that's not how it works. We get caught up in the things that don't matter. I've had many conversations recently where it's, it really comes back to the only things that matter are the health of the people around me and the ones that I love. All of those little concerns that we have on a day-to-day basis fall away if the life of someone that matters to you is in jeopardy. You don't care about making your house payment, and so if you can live knowing for certain what that is, like, okay, do I have time or don't I? Then you can I believe in making informed decisions. And, that's part of the information of all of the that is part of all available information if you have it. That's The reason I want to be so transparent about what we're doing and how we're doing it is I want people to decide with all available information if this is right for them. Because it's okay if it's not. I know it can help people because it helped me. Does that mean it helps everybody? Absolutely not.
Everybody's different, aren't they?
Different, yeah. John, thank you so much for your time today. I have found it personally utterly insightful, really, really interesting. And we really wish you all the best with it. I know that we'll both probably be signing up for our free trial.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely dying to know what's going on with it.
We'd love to maybe talk to you again and see how things have gone in a few months' time or maybe next year.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to keep in touch.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning into It's a Death Sentence. Please keep listening to our weekly episodes.
And if you like our show, please like, share and subscribe.
We are dying to talk to you.